Okay, welcome everyone to our next session. So we're going to have a presentation now, 20-minute presentation, followed by some questions. The questions, as usual, please use the Menti. So can you please welcome Harvey Tweats. He's also joined by Tom Whitehurst, one of his colleagues who's in the audience. Harvey's going to be talking about relics of the Holocene. And Harvey is director of Celtic Rewilding, specializing in restoring lost wildlife, including beavers and white storks across 16,997 hectares of land. That's very specific. Blending science, public engagement, and practical rewilding. Over to you, Harvey.
Yeah. There are times in life which feel down to fate, and what today is one of those moments, as I'll reveal later in my talk, Relics of the Holocene. The name comes from sort of a journey that my organisation has been on for the best part of half a decade now. It certainly feels like, with increasing climate change, biodiversity loss, that the calm that we call for the stable period just after the last ice age, the Holocene, has been disturbed and the Anthropocene is in. I'm going to talk to you about my journey and how rewilding ultimately fits into an uncertain future. I do apologise if I brush over some aspects of the talk, because I've got to get through quite a lot in a short amount of time. But a bit about me. This is me. I'm 21 and I'm an extremely keen rewilder. And my close friend Tom Whitehurst, we've been childhood friends since nursery. And growing up, we actually had a mutual interest in both wildlife and business. And so we quickly spied an opportunity to combine those two passions. Celtic Rewilding is a restoration consultancy, and we work across, a wide range of disciplines. We were established in 2020 during the dark days of COVID, and thanks to some not so insignificant funding from a group of nature-minded investors, we were able to establish a captive breeding facility and a HQ in our hometown. You may have seen us in the paper at the time in The Guardian. Our breeding facility really is sort of the beating heart of Celtic. This is our sort of R&D sort of operation. We're immensely proud of the sort of site that we've built, very grassroots, and we continue to invest in the facilities required to study and look after these species. To focus on one of those species, 2024 was very much the year of the white stork for us. We were able to, thanks to some generous donors, assemble an aviary and take on 2 breeding pairs, thought to originate from Germany as injured birds. And we partnered with Leave Curious at the time to do a video about the project. At the business's core, we work with estates, farms, film productions and zoos. And we ensure ecosystem restoration and British native species really do take centre stage. Just in the last year, we've worked on a couple of major Hollywood motion pictures. I've signed an NDA, so I can't say any more than that. 3 zoos and about a dozen landowners that are pioneering rewilding. But now, I just want to focus on one of our more famous projects. I imagine, like many in this room, an interest in nature starts at a really early age. I have my parents to thank for that, and my grandfather in particular for getting me outdoors and getting me excited about British wildlife. In this photo, I'm about 2 or 3 years old, and I'm already fascinated by animals, especially creepy crawlies like the newt in my hand. When I was little, I would dream about a time when a vast steamy swamp would have blanketed the earth, a sort of lost world. I would dream about giant reptiles lurking between giant redwood trees. Like many children, I was obsessed with dinosaurs. And for a while, I really wanted to be a paleontologist, actually. I even had a huge fossil collection to boot. But I couldn't help, especially as I grew older, but take note of the times. In my early teens, climate change and biodiversity loss became comprehensible issues, especially thanks to programmes from Sir David Attenborough. Very quickly, I realised that I must act and help in any way to try and drive forward and create a positive future for the planet. At the time, I regarded my country as surely having things in order. We are one of the biggest economies in the world, after all. But I was quickly horrified to learn exactly how bad things really were. Displayed on this slide are a range of facts and figures that I think are all too familiar with the people in this room, so I'm not going to go into detail with them. And furthermore, when this wildlife loss is put into perspective with other nations, it demonstrates just the amount of work required to repair nature just here alone. In my late teens, I was also guided by a person I don't think many people will know at all, a Scottish fella. He's not in this room at the moment, and he sends his sort of regards for not being here. I was, of course, mentored and influenced by the sort of mad rewilder Derek Gow. One day, about 8 years ago, I was reading some works that were published by Alfred Newton, an esteemed ornithologist and contemporary of Sir Richard Owen, actually. And Alfred Newton was actually based here at Cambridge, and he wrote a report about Emys lutaria, the remains of a British turtle, fossils. But unlike the bones of, say, dinosaurs, these bones were young, and even Newton knew this. For those who don't know, Britain's only got 6 native species of reptile, and that's very few when compared to European neighbours like France or even Scandinavia. So finding young turtle remains is really quite exciting. So I started to do some digging, if you'll excuse the pun. So there's one of the sketches, the composites from the turtle. This talk feels a bit like fate because in turn I actually ended up here at Cambridge. The turtle fossils are actually held literally almost in the other room in the museum where we were last night. And that's another photo, and there's a photo from recent times that we've used in some of our work. There was a debate as to whether these fossils were older and therefore kind of irrelevant to sort of our modern understanding of biodiversity in Britain. They could have been Pleistocene fossils that had eroded out of older rock and then redeposited, sort of giving the impression that they were modern. So I set about trying to find some answers, and it took me here. I posted about this sort of journey online, and a chap named Dr. Justin Gerlach reached out from the University of Cambridge, and he actually asked whether we wanted to join forces on this project and start to pursue sort of the investigation into British European pond turtles. And to do that, we needed to actually go back to exactly where the turtles were found, and we don't know that well exactly where they were found, but approximately somewhere here. The remains, turning out to be about 3 turtles, were found near to a sleepy village in rural Norfolk, and they were found, importantly, within peat. And that means that if the fossils were young, they would have been living and breathing in a time that was relevant to sort of our modern time here. But we couldn't be 100% sure. Although this image is clearly a modern agricultural landscape, it still bears sort of ancient landforms of a time gone by. So circled, you can see some remnants of Pingu pools, and these are also meres. These are glacial features created at the end of the last ice age. And in a way, they show a sort of a glimpse at a time when a vast wetland would have covered this area. It would have been more complex than that, but there would have been this incredible landscape of dry areas and wetter areas, etc. At the end of the last ice age, East Anglia, so Norfolk and Suffolk, was actually connected to this area we call Doggerland, often called a lost world. And that is because Doggerland was a land bridge, and it was flooded and under the North Sea by about 8,000 years ago. If a species was able to cross Doggerland from continental Europe and into Britain, it's native. So if a species got here within the last sort of 13,000 years. So if turtles managed to get across Doggerland to Britain, they must have been native. And quickly, I became quite obsessed with Doggerland. Doggerland became that swamp of my childhood. I read a lot and was rebuilding this sort of lost world in my imagination. We know that great herds of wild cattle, horses, red deer, reindeer, wild boar would have migrated across this plain, a bit like the Masai Mara that we see in Africa today. Spiraling squadrons of storks flying high into the air with pelicans, cranes and egrets. Tree frogs barking on warm summer nights. Pool frogs quacking on misty May mornings. And the European pond turtle, silent and contempt. But how would we know it was here? Considering Doggerland is under about 50 metres of water. I think that we're on a bit of a verge of a revolution in conservation. We've seen from the talk yesterday from Colossal at sort of some of those potential applications. But just a couple of years ago, a paper was published in Nature detailing how a 2-million-year-old ecosystem in Greenland, of all places, had been discovered and sort of replicated thanks to advances in environmental DNA. This is traces of DNA from organisms left in an environment only to be later read in the lab by scientists. Because Greenland is covered in ice, there's no access to fossils, and this is how this environment was sort of replicated. So it's very unusual, considering Greenland is pretty much covered in ice, to see mastodons and quite temperate species. Had similar work been done on Doggerland, hidden somewhere, maybe in a paper with an ambiguous and boring title? The answer is yes. Contained within this paper by Emily Cribden, pond turtles were actually highlighted as one of the most frequently detected vertebrates. We think most likely due to the fact that of their aquatic tendencies. Christmas had come early for us. So combining this knowledge with fossil locations and also genetic studies, we can actually simulate what a movement of turtles from a glacial refuge somewhere down in southern Europe. Did that just play? I'll play it again. Somewhere down in southern Europe would have looked like. We know that the British turtle had a refuge in the Balkan area. Granted, it would have been a lot slower than this in reality. So this special type of pond turtle is actually very rare today and quite cold adapted. And we know that when it expanded north, some went into Denmark and northern Germany, and some went actually as far north as mid-Sweden, and some went to Britain. So we needed some, was the answer. We needed some actual turtle specimens in the UK to continue our research. So we went and got some. Thanks to Roland Flack and Benjamin Zaremba, who are two fellow turtle conservationists working to restore the species in their home state of Bavaria, they actually decided to partner with us and provide an adequate number of turtles for our project. And in late 2023, we jumped into the car and journeyed all the way to Bavaria to collect them. DEFRA were about as useful as a chocolate teapot in all of this. But luckily, after endless paperwork, we were able to get them back to the UK. So this is the first time that this type of pond turtle has made this journey back to the UK, we think, since the last ice age, which is really, really cool. And why are we doing this? Well, this here sort of demonstrates that with increasing climate change, this species will become increasingly threatened in southern Europe. Wetlands will dry up, and more importantly, turtles have got a temperature-dependent sort of sex determination system with their eggs. The warmer it gets away from their nice temperature, the sexes become skewed. And so moving them northwards is actually a potential solution to maintain their conservation status. And it's a way of, it's a process known as assisted colonization, this idea that a human-caused issue that's affecting the world, climate change, could be used to help species avoid a complete conservation catastrophe. But this isn't the only benefit. We think that, that turtles really do have a potential to help our wetlands. The research on this is ongoing, and we are continuing to pursue this, and I can't necessarily go into the details now, but to just give you an example, they are carrion eaters and detritivores, and this means that they will remove dead fish, for instance, after a fish kill. Remove that excess nutrients and allow that water body to become restored. Research across the globe in all sorts of areas, across all sorts of different species of freshwater turtle, has shown that they have incredible wetland restoring effects, specifically research in temperate North America. Myself and Justin and a small team of academics actually compiled all of this research into a feasibility study for the next stage of the project. In time, we want to establish a trial release area for the turtles. This will be a fenced enclosure initially to see a couple of things. First of all, what their effects on the aquatic environment are, but also how well they can breed and incubate their eggs. We've been looking at a range of sites, and we've got a couple of sites now in mind that might be suitable to reintroduce turtles into this enclosed environment. One of those potential sites is a beaver site, actually, and I'm particularly swayed by that one, but we'll see. And as for the turtles that we brought back for Bavaria, they're currently undergoing a quarantine, and they're doing really, really well. We've had an incredibly low mortality rate. We've lost none. And this video here shows you just how hardy this species is. So this is filmed within the last week when we've had the freezing temperatures. You can see the pond is totally covered in ice, and the turtle is moving about under the water. They'll even mate in this sort of freezing sort of temperature. When the temperatures actually get this low, they reduce their metabolism down to a level of which they can survive by breathing through their arse and their skin. We'll just go back a sec. So we're really excited about this project, and we're excited to see how it progresses over the next couple of years, critically being securing that release site. But just to end, just to change the tune a little bit and talk about another project we're working on, I just wanted to share one of the sort of key learnings from this project, and that is the power of the arts in conservation. One of our clients and collaborators that we're most proud of is a company and a sort of charitable arm called Wild Rendale. And this is led by a husband and wife duo, Jack and Hannah, who specialise in producing artwork. You'll actually see some of their products on raffle at the front. And their artwork is about British nature. And so naturally, rewilding for them was a brilliant fit. Rendale have moved people to tears with their work, and if it reminds us of anything, it's that our relationship with nature is not necessarily a sanitised one, it's not a binary one, it's a creative one. And I think our ancestors did it best when they painted things like this, of these incredible landscapes. They would have gazed in the wonder, thrilled at the drama, and learnt. And I can only hope that in our work that we can learn to rekindle this relationship going forward. Thank you. I think I'm one of the only talks that's finished on time. I'm quite proud of that.
That is fantastic. Absolutely, to the minute, 20 minutes presentation. And the first time I think I've ever heard somebody talk about breathing through their arse on the...
That's a technical term, isn't it?
Yeah.
Super. Okay, so again, we have questions coming up on the Menti. Could we put it up so people can get the code in case they haven't got it? So the first question, are pond turtles really needed in our UK ponds, as invasive red-eared sliders eat frog spawn and rare amphibians?
It's a very, very good question, and what the research shows is the two species are very different in their sort of habitat preference and also their diet. So American sliders are bigger, way more boisterous, way more aggressive, and have got a voracious appetite. Pond turtles, it seems to be that they are that more carrion-based species, so they're eating things that are already dead, and they are much smaller. In Europe, another threat as a result of climate change is actually American sliders outcompeting European pond turtles. I'd like to think that in the next sort of 10 to 15 years, where we'll have a climate that's too cold for sliders to successfully reproduce, they've got a higher temperature need than European pond turtles. If we actually got our act together and eradicated that species, we could actually provide an arc site, as it were, for Europe, for European pond turtles. And it is sort of ongoing research that we will sort of examine. Also, pond turtles are quite, they will eat plant matter as well, which sliders usually don't eat.
Brilliant, thank you. And kind of connected to that is, with the massive amphibian crisis in the UK, would we be better focusing on them rather than bringing in a new species?
I think, one of the key things is that, for instance, this work has attracted funding that wouldn't have usually gone into conservation per se. And so I think these projects can actually be a net benefit because they can attract new sort of sources of income in, and also they help to revitalise that message and that image. They keep things relevant. We've had traditional conservation that has seen some amazing successes, but isn't cutting the mark, it isn't there. And so we're going to have to look at novel solutions to problems because, quite frankly, we cannot keep maintaining the status quo.
And again, linked to that, we have one here. Oh gosh, it's gone.
The prioritisation is shifting all the time.
Yeah, sorry, they keep jumping on my screen. So what's your funding model? So you mentioned donations. Are you a charity?
So when we initially set up, we actually wanted to be a charity. We went to the Charity Commission at 17 and told, laughed us out the room, basically go away. The only model we could pick was a limited company, which has immense challenges because ultimately the work that we are doing is technically they've got some elements of philanthropy. The way that we work is that our rewilding on our ecology and our work with filmmaking pays the bills. And this stuff is fun stuff. So we genuinely, if we were to drop the turtles, drop the storks, drop everything, we'd have a much more successful and profitable business. But that's not why this is not why we do what we do. And going forward, we are potentially, not yet, but potentially looking at, maybe going into a charity when we sort of see that fit. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, we've still got more. Do we know when and why pond turtles became extinct in the UK?
So the leading theory is that it was climate change that caused their extinction. But across Europe, we know that the European pond turtle doesn't actually conform to a natural distribution. So Uwe Fritz, who's one of the leading pond turtle scientists, actually says that in the north of its range, it could have been the extinction of large herbivores that caused the extinction of the pond turtle. And I'll explain that. When large herbivores were hunted to extinction, it varies, but somewhere between 5 and maybe 2,000 years ago. The open habitats that turtles require to lay their eggs, and literally it needs to be open sand, is incredibly rare. And so as soon as that succession would have taken place, and we can see that happened in the pollen record as a result of large herbivores going extinct, these nesting sites would have all but disappeared. There's only one suitable geographic area with a nesting site potential in the UK, and that is an area of sand, a sort of a sand belt that stretches sort of through Thetford Forest. It used to be that the sand was that mobile that villages would get sandstorms and be blown out. And it's crazy to think that this would happen in the British countryside. But that also happens to be in East Anglia, that sort of area. So it's really exciting. I think a lot of conservation sort of excitement for me, and I think we'll see more of it, will come from the east of England, because that's where species were moving in to the UK from. And it's just a really cool area. The geography is really cool.
Brilliant. I'm going to go, we are on time, but one more, because you've been a dream conference presenter in terms of timing. How would you say paleohistorical data is valuable for informing species reintroduction?
Absolutely vital, and we need so much more of it. I think, when I wanted to be a paleontologist, the issue for me was just that it didn't seem applicable to the modern day and didn't seem that, we could have such an impact. So I think that sort of field, especially paleontology within the last sort of 10,000, 50,000 years, is just absolutely vital, and we need more funding towards it. And I hope as well we have more sinuosity between the two fields as well. For a while, we've never really joined the dots. We've had people doing archaeology and paleontology in Britain, but not that they're not linking through to necessarily conservation. I think the first person that did that, of course, was Derek Yalden, and we need to keep going with that sort of work. So
brilliant.
So,
Thank you so much. That was brilliant.
No problem. I should just say, I will just say, if anyone is interested in some of our services, etc., I do have a service brochure here if anyone wants to speak to me. But yeah, I'll be staying about for a bit. So yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so we can move around now, and after 5 minutes, we will have Jack Villamo talking about rewilding at sea.